This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. From the launch your online shop stage, all the way to the we just hit 1 million orders stage. No matter what stage you're in, Shopify's there to help you grow. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/special offer, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/special offer.
Brew Strong is brought to you by Blickman Engineering, home of the Riptide. Visit them online at blickmanengineering.com.
Brewers, it's time for the beer radio you've been looking for. This is the show that dispels myths, tackles the toughest topics, and makes no apologies for geeking out on beer. Hosted by two guys that drink before they think, Jamil Zainasheff and John Palmer. This is Brew Strong.
Hey, howdy, hey, my brewing brothers and sisters.
Cretans.
The Cretan himself.
And happy to be here.
It always is fun. If it wasn't so much fun, I don't think we would have done this for the last
10 years.
13 years? 12 years?
Yeah.
Oh, please. How else have you been funding your brewery?
Right. This is the cash cow. I got to keep doing this. It's like, it's like turning tricks on the corner. You have to do it. Yeah, you want to.
But I do have to say that I'm always gratified when people come up to us at conferences and so on and thank us for doing the show. That is very gratifying. We enjoy doing it, and I'm glad that you all out there enjoy listening to it.
Yeah, when people say they find value in it, whether it's just humor or brewing information or what have you, that's really nice. I appreciate that too. I would say that's the reason that we keep going is because it seems to matter to people, and they seem to really get value out of it. Otherwise, it's nothing without the listeners. So,
right,
very much appreciated. It's also very much appreciated that Mr. John Blickman pays for the show, so all those people being gratified and satisfied are not having to pay for it. I don't know if you're all familiar with Blickman Engineering. You should be, because they make some of the best brewing equipment anywhere, bar none, any manufacturer, anywhere in the world. They make, if not the best, absolutely most of the best. You should check them out. BlickmanEngineering.com. They got a website. They usually post a lot of interesting things there. If you have said to yourself in the past, "Oh, Blickman Engineering, that's really nice stuff, but it's a little, too high for my budget, that I'm allowed to spend on brewing equipment." Well, you could check out their Anvil series of equipment.
AnvilBrewing.com.
AnvilBrewing.com. And there's, same Blickman quality, but, a little more... maybe some less features, not as feature full, but still great brewing equipment and a much more entry-level price, right, to get you started with high-quality equipment that'll last you forever, equipment that you can pass on to somebody else if you change your equipment out. The worst expense in brewing is when you buy something cheap just to get started, and then, you find out it's junk, and it doesn't.
It sits on the shelf after that. Yeah,
you get rust or issues like that, and then it's just crap. You're throwing away money. It's better to spend a few bucks more and get quality. Always buy quality in this stuff, because once you get the brewing bug, you tend to do it for pretty much the rest of your life.
Yep.
I know. I'll be a home brewer for the rest of my life. So. Check them out, BlickmanEngineering.com. If you get a chance, send them an email, feedback at BlickmanEngineering.com, and tell John how much you appreciate that he pays for the show, and that he's a big part of the brewing industry. They've got everything from, like I said, entry level to professional level equipment for, people going commercial even. So check it all out. They got something for that you could use to brew your beer. All right, so we've been doing this series of shows on working with barrels.
Right.
Buying them, filling them, fixing them, and
talking about wood.
All kinds of wood, hardwood, softwood, bungs, where you put your bungs. And so we're wrapping up with we're getting near the end here, folks. I promise you,
culminating
with this fourth show, 4 full hours of talking about barrels. It is a pretty big subject.
It is.
One of the things I've gotten this question a lot. It's like, well, how do you fill a barrel? How do you empty a barrel? What's the process there, and what sort of things should I look for? Before you consider filling a barrel, you need to make sure, like I said earlier in the previous show, that you've got the barrel sealed, fully sealed. If you don't, when you put your beer in there, hoping that that's going to seal the barrel is a giant mistake, because it's just going to leak. So you want it sealed. If you've sealed it with hot water, you want to make sure it's cooled down to the temperature of the beer, or the temperature where you're going to store it. You don't want to put your beer into a hot barrel, because it's going to heat it up. It's going to start that process that you want.
It's going to oxidize badly, yeah.
Right, and you could get some heat staling if it's high enough temperature. So the barrel should be cool and sealed. You want to do clean transfers. Now, a lot of times people say, well, it's got bacteria and bread and wild yeast and all this stuff in it. Doesn't matter. You be sloppy and nasty. You can't. You don't want to contaminate that beer with something else that is an unwanted organism. You don't want to get Acetobacter in there. You don't want to end up with something that's going to produce vinegar in your beer. You don't want to leave a mess. If you spill outside the barrel and it gets on the ground, you're going to want to clean the ground up. You're going to want to clean the outside of the barrel. All the the sugars and proteins and all that stuff in a beer are going to start to grow mold. They can grow mold. They can attract insects. It can grow more unwanted kinds of bacteria that could possibly work their way through the wood. So you really don't want to do that either. Once you fill it, you want to fill it carefully. It's okay if it goes over the top, but you're going to want to rinse that barrel off and make sure it's nice and clean. You're going to want to minimize your O2 pickup. It's not as critical as when you're bottling a beer or trying to minimize oxygen pickup completely, but you don't want to splash it and make a big mess. You want to, if you're a little bit cautious about it, you can flush the barrel with CO2 or nitrogen and then fill it. Fill from the bottom up, but generally, if you fill quietly from the bottom up, you're fine. You'll pick up some oxygen, but especially if let me put it this way. If you're putting in a beer without active organisms, yeasts and bacteria and things like that, to consume the oxygen, then you want to be much more careful in filling the barrel. If I'm taking my Robust Porter and putting it in a barrel, I don't want to splash that around because I'm going to get too much oxidation. You want to minimize the oxidation on something like that. If I'm taking my sour and I've got Brett and Lactobacillus and Pediococcus all active, and I add it, they're going to quickly consume that extra oxygen. The other beer, the clean beer, in that case, it's just going to be some oxidation, some staling that's going to happen. There's going to be something that happens anyways, but you don't want to rush it and you don't want to overdo it. So you need to be careful, more careful on clean beers like that.
I've got a question.
Uh-huh.
What are you using to actually fill the barrel? I mean, are you using a Blickman beer gun? or are there other commercial products available that do this job, or do you have to make your own from the hardware store?
They have barrel fillers. They have barrel fillers and barrel beer extractors. They call them bulldogs. It's got a stainless pipe that goes down to the bottom. Usually there's a pin in there that holds it just a little bit off the bottom for when you're taking your liquid back out. It can leave the lees on the bottom. And then they'll have a way to a bung that screws in, and then you can pressurize it and force the beer back out, or you can use it to add beer in. You could use almost anything. You could use a piece of copper pipe or a piece of stainless pipe or even plastic tubing. What you want to do is just reach to the bottom of the barrel and start filling from there, and then fill from the bottom up, like I was saying. You want to be fairly gentle, because if you splash it, not only do you pick up oxygen, but you're going to get a lot of protein foaming in a beer, and so that can make it difficult to get the barrel all the way full. You'll have to foam all that stuff out of there. It's better just
makes a mess.
Yeah, it makes a mess. It's some of your head forming protein, so it's better to fill it slow and carefully. You want to use non-carbonated beer, of course, but just keep in mind that beer has carbonation in it all the time. Even when it's still, it's got a tiny bit. So just be careful, especially right after fermentation. It's got it's super saturated at the temperature it's at and pressure it's at. So that can come out too. So you just want to wait and let that pass. I believe in not putting fruit in the barrels. When I started out, I put fruit in the barrels, and I've completely changed off of that. I think even a rare barrel, they were putting fruit in, and I think they changed on it too. The easier way to do it, and the better way that I think gives you better fruit character is to. What we do is we just put the beer in the barrels, and when the beer's right, we will ferment the fruit in a stainless fermenter, right? And then and fruit will ferment out in a day with all the fructose. Just it slams through really quick. You can either just transfer the beer into the fruit, and the bread and bacteria and all that will ferment that. But if you've got like a clean beer that you want to do, again, you could ferment out your fruit with 001 or whatever, and then transfer your beer in to mix with that. And that tends to, in my experience, gives you a better fruit character. More fruit character with less fruit. If you just put the fruit in the barrel, you're going to end up with almost no fruit character. It takes forever. I think Cantillon, Russian River, all these places, what they're using is this method of put the fruit in the stainless, transfer the barreled beer to the stainless, they let it ferment in there, and then they package. And what I'm saying is you can ferment it first and then transfer in.
Okay, yeah, that cuts down having to clean the barrels, like you say, afterward, too.
Right. You don't end up with nearly the mess. And because once you put the fruit in, it'll ferment and ferment quickly, and it will blow out, and you're just going to have a big, giant mess. And a lot of the fruit will come back out. You just don't want to deal with that. You really don't want to ferment in the barrel. While there is some yeast activity and bacteria activity going on in the souring, you do your initial ferment in stainless, with like a Belgian ale yeast. Then you mix in your Brett and your bacteria. Then you transfer all that, to the barrels. I'd let the majority of the yeast cake drop out. You don't want to transfer all that yeast in there. If you have a lot of yeast in your barrels, you're going to get a lot of that meaty, autolyzed kind of character in there, so you don't want that. Topping up barrels, I think Russian River, their process is to top it once after like a month, and then they don't top it anymore. Certain things we top, and certain things we don't. We generally don't do much topping at all anymore. Of course, we don't get a whole lot of evaporation. It's going to depend on the beer. So if you have something that you're trying to minimize oxidation, and it's a clean beer, I would go ahead and keep it topped up. Just keep some beer in a stainless container, and just use that to top it up. It may be a liter every couple of weeks, or maybe a liter every couple of months. And so you just use that to top it up. If it's a sour beer, I don't think you really need to. It's better almost not to disturb it than it is to top it.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, rely on the pellicle.
Yes, right. And it's better not to disturb that. All right, let's take a short break. When we come back, we will continue with storing barrels, or how you store them once they're full, and where you're going to put them right after this.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. From the launch your online shop stage, all the way to the we just hit 1 million orders stage. No matter what stage you're in, Shopify's there to help you grow. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/special offer, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/special offer.
Are you looking for a simple brewing system that's great for all grain brewing, but everything on the market seems to be full of compromises? Blickman Engineering has the answer. The Blickman Brew Easy All Grain Brewing System. The Brew Easy is a complete system with easy upgrades and a beautiful compact design, perfect for any size brewing location. At its core, the Brew Easy is built on 2 gorgeous Blickman Boilermaker brew kettles, a high-temperature March pump, and either a top-tier gas burner or the new Boil Coil electric heater. The Brew Easy adapter lid allows the pots to stack on top of each other, forming an efficient, strong, and compact brewing setup that comes in 5, 10, and 20-gallon batch sizes. Upgrade your Brew Easy system with full automated control by adding a Blickman Tower of Power temp controller, and make moving around easy with the Blickman Kettle Cart. The Brew Easy is modular. If you already own a Boilermaker kettle, you can build your Brew Easy by purchasing just the modules you need. The new Brew Easy all-grain brewing system. See it today at BlickmanEngineering.com and brew with Blickman quality on your new Brew Easy.
Learning to brew has never been so disgusting. This is Brew Strong.
All right, we're back. We're talking barrels and all the barrel-y stuff that you need to do. I think if you download all 4 of these episodes, you should know a lot more about barrels and using barrels than you ever did before. At least enough to get you started and to do it properly, either homebrew scale or commercial scale.
Man, if only there were a barrel and mixed fermentation themed show on the Brewing Network. It'd be awesome to do an even deeper dive into this.
Yes, absolutely.
Maybe one day.
Maybe one day there will be. All right, storing. So once you got your tasty beer or spirits or whatever in there, keep in mind that the temperature at which you store these things will affect your final product. So
What do you recommend?
Well, I recommend never exceeding 20 degrees C. This is like a standard across Belgium, and I think everybody follows it. It's about 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay. And that's a decent temperature. If it was warmer than that, some of the processes tend to go faster. You get more, acetic acid. Like in all things, warm temperatures accelerate these processes. So every 10 degrees C, doubles the rate of staling. It can double the rate of some of these compounds being developed, and you just generally don't want to. In between 10C and 20C is kind of the sweet zone, which is about 50 degrees Fahrenheit and 68 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's it's like a good general warehouse temperature. You never want to freeze or anything like that. And people go, okay, so I should put it exactly at X temperature. No, not necessarily. You want to have some variance in your temperature. It's part of the natural process that tends to favor some organisms over another. It tends to make the wood open up and close. So
lets the beer breathe a bit.
Yeah, gives it some change. Humidity. If you're in a higher humidity location, like if you're in Florida or something like that, the higher the humidity is going to favor more alcohol evaporation. And lower humidity is going to favor water loss. So if you're in a high humidity area, the ABV of your product is going to go down. And if you're in a lower humidity, your ABV is going to go up. It's more for spirits, but I imagine it could affect a substantial beer some way. Generally, beers, especially in the U.S., it's not that much of an issue. High humidity, we were talking about mold earlier, can encourage the growth of mold. So generally you don't want to do a lot of high humidity, especially high humidity and warm can be a bit of a mess. So as far as losses, if it's high temp and low humidity, you can see maybe a liter a week disappearing. I did a barrel thing for the NHC 1 year, and I did it more beer, and the only place to store the barrels was up high on one of the pallet racks, at the top of the pallet racks during the summer, and it must have been 110, 120 degrees up there, and I was losing a couple of liters a week out of that barrel. So that can really eat away at some of your liquid. How
long do you normally store your barrels for?
Well, it depends on the product. So, when we're doing sour beers, we will do, a minimum of a year, and then, generally 2 years. Sometimes we'll go to 3, but around 3, we tend to start culling those out. And we like to use a blend of like 1 and 2 year old sour to make our sours. If you're doing something like a bourbon barrel aged or something like that, I used to believe in not going past like 6 weeks or 2 months because you started extracting more of these other flavors, these oaks and things like that, especially in like a bourbon barrel. That's the only it's its first use. And I also worried about, contamination, things like that. But if you have a clean fill of those barrels, what I've found is if you leave it in there for like a year, you will extract some of those wood flavors, those tannins and those things. But there's a whole range of things in between just putting it in for 4 weeks and getting mostly just bourbon versus putting it in for 11 more months, and you were extracting out some of those wood flavors, those caramels and some other things through there. You are picking up a little bit of oxidation,
those intangibles you're kind of looking for in the first place, really.
Absolutely. And so what we'll do now is we'll store it for a year. I've gone to 2 years on some of these, and then we keep unbarreled beer in stainless, and we use that to blend back because it can be an overwhelming barrel character, and you've kind of lost the beer character by that time. But you add back some of the unbarreled beer, and you can dial it in to just, really fantastic. And so that's the way.
What do you store this unbarreled beer in? Sankey kegs or steel tanks?
We'll store them in kegs and then put them in the cold box, or sometimes we'll brew the beer again and then use that. Use fresh beer that way. I like using the same beer from the same batch. I don't know why. I think that beer changes over time as well, even though it's stored cold in kegs. But it's one of those things that time in the barrel can be very advantageous as long as things hasn't become contaminated and things are going in the wrong direction. Let's see here. One of the things we're talking about, clean barrels and sour barrels. If you have a clean fermentation barrel, you shouldn't put it anywhere near the sour fermentation barrels. You want to keep a distance, 10 feet, 3 meters, at least between them, because it has been shown that when barrels are in racks, Brettanomyces will travel from barrel to barrel. Apparently, it gets through the wood to the outside, dries, becomes dusty, a little puff of wind, and now it's on the next barrel, and then it kind of works its way in and gets inside. So by keeping your clean barrels and your sour barrels separate, in our place they're two completely opposite sides of the warehouse, so there's 150 feet between them and walls, and so that's one of the things. The thing that always bothers me about this is, well, there's Brett and bacteria in the air, in the dust, and it travels with the dust, and so that's also landing on the barrel, and how that doesn't get in and cause a problem, I don't know. So beats me, but I've been told from good authority that the barrels will contaminate each other if they're close, so we keep them separate. Also, if you're going to stack barrels, if you have a bunch of barrels, the lower you stack them is always safer, and you want to use proper racks, metal, like Western Square racks. People, you can chock them with wood and build stacks, and people do that, but they're really hard to move around and get empty, right? So the lower the stack, the better. Whiskey barrels, they're weaker. They're much thinner than wine barrels. We set a 4-stack limit, and generally try and not exceed 3 on the whiskey barrels. Wine barrels are much stronger. I know places that stack them to 6. I think.
That'd be really high. I mean, how do you get them down from there?
With a forklift. I'm trying to think. I'm losing my mind here. The brewery down in Los Angeles, I believe they were stacking 6 high at one time. But 5 is much better. Even 5, man, it's up there. But the barrels are quite strong. So we tend to stack 3 on the whiskey barrels and 5 on the wine barrels. And again, the lower you do it, the safer it is. If you don't stack any, that's the safest, because the stack's never going to fall. And if you're doing it, you got to make sure the alignment's just perfect, because a little bit of misalignment, if you're off to one side, you haven't, it's kind of crooked, and you're building a stack and you're not paying attention, and you build a 5-high stack that's slowly but surely going over to one side, it becomes very dangerous. So you just need to be careful of that. It's always nice to have a spotter to tell you exactly that it's perfectly lined up, and that's one way to go. Pests. What you'll find is if you have a lot of stacks. I mean, at Heretic we had 500 wine barrels. Made quite a serious stack. And, people aren't going through there. You'll find a lot of pests. So, one, you'll find, if there's spilled any beer or there's any aroma of beer or alcohol coming from the barrels, you can find fruit flies. You also start finding spiders. Those borer beetles will also be a problem. You want to keep your doors closed. You can use bug traps and zappers. One really effective bug trap is to use a mason jar and take one of those little clear plastic funnels, drop that in there, and then cut it so you just have the cone part there, and you fill it with an ounce or two of apple cider vinegar, a couple drops of soap. The lemon-scented dish soap, I think, works best.
Huh.
And then that makes it an effective bug trap. You can just put tape around the cone of the funnel around the opening of the mason jar, and you got yourself a very effective bug trap. I used cup holders, those cup holders that hang on the edge of a door from Walmart, and just hung them on the barrel racks, and those worked really well. You can get ultraviolet bug zappers. They work fairly good, but not as good as the traps. And then leave your spiders alone. Let them in there. They will do a lot of cleanup work for you, and they can take out a lot of bugs. I have even seen larger life forms stalking my barrel racks. I found a lizard that must have been a good foot long, scurrying around in there. At first I saw the tail, I thought it was a rat, but it was a big old lizard that was feasting on maybe the spiders or what. So we had a whole ecosystem rocking there. I thought it was pretty awesome. I really enjoyed it. All right, let's take another short break, and when we come back, we can talk about tracking your products and sampling them right after this.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
Back to the two guys that know how to turn beer into beer. This is Brew Strong.
All right, we're back. We're talking barrels and barrel stuff.
Yep, we've filled them. We've talked stacking and storage.
Mm-hmm.
How do you keep track of these buggers?
Good
You
point.
just put numbers on them?
Yeah, I mean, one way you put numbers on them, we had a little clipboard. We'd use a little clipboard, and we'd embed a little eye hook in one edge of the barrel, and then use like a paper clip to hang our little clipboard on it, and we'd have the ID of the barrel. We'd have, the size, what was in it, when it was filled, what type of beer, and then we'd have, notes for any additions, any tasting notes, things like that. When you start getting a bunch of them, and even if you only have a few, I think it's nice to do an electronic spreadsheet and track the barrels over their lifetime. So if you have a barrel that everything turns out really good in it, I would keep track of that barrel, keep notes on it. If you're a commercial brewer, you actually need to label every barrel with a fermentation vessel number is required, and its capacity. So you need to have that on there.
That's a federal thing?
Yes. Every fermentation vessel is required to have an ID number, and it has to match your logs, your tracking. So you have to have these logs. We did log sheets for every barrel, like I said, and then it was an easy way of tracking right there when you're tasting, seeing what was in there, and then also completing your logs for federal and state requirements. Sampling is another thing that people tend to ask about. First off, when do you sample? Generally we would do something around, monthly, or, initially after a couple of months. And then, as time goes on and it's developing, maybe a little more frequently, there's generally not a lot of harm in sampling more, as long as you're not contaminating your barrel and you're not drinking the entire, product before it's ready. So you need to, kind of moderate that. But usually for the first 3 months, not a whole lot is happening. I mean, something happens almost immediately, and then it's nothing happening, and then you start to notice more development in the beer or spirits or whatever you have. So that's sampling times. The way to sample, and it's very important that whatever you sample, you're not introducing contamination, and that you're not transferring contamination from barrel to barrel. If you think every barrel's clean, that's fine. But if you're using something like a thief, you need to make sure you're sanitizing that between barrels, so you're not causing any cross contamination. A thief is nice. They have curved ones, things like that can get in through the bung even when the barrels are stacked. If you don't have them stacked, they're super easy to use. They have some nice glass ones. They have plastic ones, fairly cheap. The advantage to that is you can get samples faster. You can get larger samples faster. The Vinny nail is something a lot of people started using, and those work fairly well. But it's a slower sample, depending on the size of the nail you use. With a thief, you don't have the nail to drop. You don't have to pound the nail back in.
And you'd use those with removable bungs, the silicone bungs, right?
Yes. Just pop the bung off, and then you can reach in. And it also gives you a chance to check how full the barrel is. The nice thing about the Vinny nail is it doesn't disturb the pellicle, right? Because you do it in the lower third of the barrel head. What a Vinny nail is it's a stainless nail. You drill a size just about the same size as the diameter of the nail. You use smooth shank stainless nails. What Vinny was advocating using, or what he was using, he wasn't advocating. He was like, "This is what I use." He used a four penny smooth shank stainless nail, which was 0.109 inch in diameter, or 2.7686 millimeter. Took a 7/64 inch hole, so you drill the hole first, and then you just tap in the nail with the hammer, and you pull it out with a pair of channel locks. And always keep some spare nails in your pocket, because at one point in the stack, you'll end up dropping your nail, and then you'll be standing there with your finger on a hole yelling for somebody to come and bring you a nail. So you want to carry some nails with you. So it just depends on what your need is. That's a fine way to do it. If you've only got a couple of barrels and they're not stacked, I would just go with the thief. It's just easier, quicker. If you've got them stacked, it can be tricky to get the thief in and out, and it can make more of a mess. The Vinny nail will make a mess too. I mean, you have to stand there ready with a cup, pull the nail out, catch it. Sometimes something will block the hole, and then it'll dribble down the front. Sometimes it'll come shooting out if there's a little bit of back pressure on it. So you got to catch that, and then keep the cup there while you put the nail back in and get the nail in, and then you can minimize the amount of mess that occurs. Two good ways. The important thing is, again, not to contaminate your goods with your sampling, because that would be the worst. And then let's see, how about barrel harvesting?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So once everything's tasting good, and you've tasted all the barrels that you think you're gonna work with, my preference, the classic way is taste this and blend this with this, and try blends of everything, and I find that that's okay, but if a barrel doesn't taste good, don't include it in the operation. If it's questionable,
makes sense. Yeah.
If you're getting hints of sourness in a barrel, don't blend it in with the other barrels that don't taste sour, because you're going to contaminate the whole thing. So my point is always just discard any questionable barrels. Just toss them. Sometimes you can toss the contents. You can go ahead and, clean it out, pasteurize it, start again. If the same barrel, this is where your barrel log comes in handy, if the same barrel is producing bad results time after time after time, just strike that from your fleet, just give it away, turn it into a planter or whatever you might do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But as you've said before in other shows, the cost of not dumping a batch is your reputation.
Right, exactly, and if if a barrel doesn't taste good, let's say it's not contaminated or anything, but it's it's rough. And then you say stuff. Well, if I blend it in, that'll get hidden. It's like, well, yeah, but you're making the whole thing a little bit more rough. Maybe not a lot rough, but a little bit more rough, and you're taking away from whatever. The quality of that beer. So generally, my rule is if it doesn't taste good on its own, it doesn't go into the blend. One thing that we do is, and maybe this might be hard for homebrewers, is we'll lab test all our clean beer batches. So anything that's in a barrel that isn't supposed to have Brett, bacteria, all that, we'll do some HLP testing or some PCR testing to make sure that the barrel isn't contaminated. Before we blend it in. Anything that comes back positive, that can be used for something else if it tastes good, but it never goes into the blended product. Especially because, if you're going to add fruit or something like that, you can have exploding cans or exploding bottles. Not good. Let's see here. Before packaging, you're going to want to ensure that what you're putting in the package is completely attenuated. So if you're adding fruit to the sour, you got to give enough time to make sure it's fully fermented out. Make sure that any sugars or anything you're adding are not going to cause overcarbonated package. Any time you're adding something, the ones that have sat in the barrel for a year, they should not have anything to ferment again unless you add sugar to them or something like that.
How do you determine that? Do you do a forced fermentation, or you
right.
take a sample and agitate it overnight?
Right. You can do a forced fermentation to see where it should have ended up. A lot of times, there's still some yeast in those beers, and they will continue to ferment very, very slowly in the barrel. And you should be at your terminal by then. Shouldn't be a problem if you're adding back fresh yeast and sugar and stuff like that. Just be careful. Maybe run a force test on that before you do the whole batch and overcarbonate it or undercarbonate.
Mm-hmm.
The fruit additions, like I mentioned before, I like to do them in stainless, and then transfer the barrel beer to the vessel. Let it ferment, then let it settle out, and decant, take the liquid off the top, the fruit material, let it settle to the bottom, and then you can transfer it to another tank and do your carbonating or your bottle dosage can go in then. All right, and then moving and handling. All right. So, empty barrels, you can put them on a hand truck. Maybe you've seen this. You flip them up on their edge of the barrel, and then you can roll them. and that's why the way they do them around wineries. Once you've done it for a while, you get pretty good at it, and you can move them pretty fast. You tilt it like not quite a 45-degree angle.
30, 35.
Yeah, something like, it's sitting on its head end. You just tilt it a little bit to the side, and then you just start spinning it, and it rolls. And then once you get it rolling, you can just keep hitting it and, using your hands to kind of guide it. And you can turn and go wherever. Some of these guys get really good at it. But it's a quick, easy way of moving barrels. It's easier than a hand trick, if you ask me. When they're full, you're going to move them using racks. So they need to be in a rack. There's Western Squares, it's a real common type of metal rack. That can be pallet jacked or can be forklifted. And with a pallet jack, you can move a stack 3 or 4 high of full barrels, surprisingly. Just a little manual pallet jack from like Harbor Freight.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can use a sling to move a barrel, but it's always better to move them in the rack. It's much safer. The issue you end up with is sometimes you'll have only one barrel in a rack that's full, and if you pick it up, it can be difficult to move or to stack because it's unbalanced. And if you pick it up with a pallet jack, it flips one way or the other. So one of the things you can do is I've used they have special lifting straps for these that have hooks that kind of hook into the head ends and lift on that edge and lift it that way. I've used ratchet straps. I've used lifting straps from Harbor Freight, and you just put them around the body of the barrel, 2 of them, and then over the forks on a forklift. And then, very carefully you can lift it up. I wouldn't drive very far with it, but you can do it that way. Using this sling method. Because a full barrel, you're talking about 60 gallons of beer. That's going to be 240 pounds, 250 pounds, and then the barrel itself is 75 to 100. And you're going to be 325 pounds, 400 pounds, almost with just for the barrel. It is possible for 4 people to make a short move on a barrel, 2 on each end. And then, we've picked them up and set them into another rack. We've done that. But, the sling is I got to admit, is easier. It's a little more time to set up. But it is possible to move them by hand. Just be careful. When you get past a stack of 3 high, it does start to get very difficult to move a stack and much more challenging. You won't be able to move a 5 stack or a 6 stack. You'll have to destack and then move them, so keep that in mind. If you keep them all at 3 stack, it's super easy to move things around with a pallet jack. And let's see, strapping improves stability. If you want to, if you got one of the things about racks and the barrels is barrels come in different shapes and sizes. You want to put 2 of the same barrel on a rack. You don't want to take a different manufacturer, a different type of barrel, and put those on the back on one rack because, well, you can, but you want to make that your top rack. You can't stack on top of that, because it'll lean to one side or another. So you need them to be the same diameter barrels and be the same diameter at the same point on the barrel, so that if you want to stack another set of barrels on top of it. One of the things you can do is ratchet strap the barrels to the rack. You can ratchet strap a stack of barrels too, and what this does is just puts a little more tension and a little more stability to that rack. So if you've got a lot of moving to do, that's another way to handle it.
Are there any OSHA requirements, for stacking or for securing? They just assume that stack is stable on its own?
Yeah, I don't know of any specific requirements for that. Most of those requirements are like for lighting and safety and things like that. And the racks have been around and been used for a long time. There's wineries where they just use chunks of wood and they stack the barrels on top of each other in chunks of wood. And if it's done right, it's nice and stable. If it's not done right, I mean, it could be a tragedy. One of the things that we have in California is, concern about earthquakes.
Yeah. So
there are earthquake-proof rackings, but, they're extremely expensive. But they have those as well. One of the things you can do is just don't stack it very high. The lower you stack it, the safer it is. That's always one of my key points to that.
Okay.
Well, and what else? What else have we not talked about in these 4 episodes of barrels?
We've covered different styles of beer that go well with barrels. We've talked about sour versus non-sour, woods, filling, emptying,
yes, flavor development,
storing,
sour beer design, malty beer design, the barrel types, the barrel sourcing.
I suppose there's nothing left to do but to wait for the questions to come in.
Right.
We could do a barrel Q&A show in the future.
We probably could. But that's kind of the nuts and bolts of working with barrels, and I believe that's enough information in there to get people started and to do quite well. It's worked for me over the years, and a lot of this was learned from a lot of other breweries and people, and also from experimenting. I think it's a good, healthy 4 hours. See, even Scott's clapping. He's so happy.
I'm trying to start a slow clap, but nobody's joining in.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a fruit fly in the area too.
Right.
Unrelated
fruit fly. The fruit fly was just listening in, and Scott tried to kill him.
They're particularly interested in this show for some reason.
Particularly, right. So that's the... I'll give one other tip that I don't think I mentioned anywhere in the show is when we're talking about bungs. If the bung should come out and you find out later on, it's like you come back the next day and you're like, oh my God, this bung is out. Just put the bung back. Worry about it later, right? Just you put it in there. Maybe or maybe not something happened. Even if you see fruit flies around there, sometimes they don't go in. There's enough vapor coming out that they don't go into the barrel, or they're interested in something else. Just put the bung back in, and then just see what happens. Yes, it could end up being, a bunch of vinegar later on down the road. Well, that's all right. At that point, you dump it and you flush it and go on with your life. But don't assume just because the bung fell out that you've ruined your beer or your spirits. You just put it back in and hope for the best. So while I'm adamant about throwing stuff away, not until it's proven.
Okay. Do you ever have problems with rats or mice around barrel rooms?
No, not other than the giant lizard that I thought initially was a rat. I haven't seen any mice around there. Of course, we tend to have them away from the walls, and all your mice and rats are going to stick to the walls, or they're going to follow the wall as they travel around the building. You generally won't see them out in the open. They will only run along the path of the walls. So, we, like every other brewery, have traps there, and then we got traps outside. They tend to go in the weirdest places. It's not even they don't even go near the grain, or maybe we're trapping them before they get to the grain. We've caught over 9 years, maybe 5 mice, and that's been it. You know, they tend to. You put your poison traps outside. And they go out and they come to the building because it's warm or cold, or depending on what they need, and then they go, oh, look, food on the way in. They eat that, and then they're dead somewhere. You know, and then you use sticky traps to catch them. So we have a big field near us, but we really don't have much of an issue.
Okay.
The trick is good pest control. You know, hire a pest company and keep an eye on that. But you'll get mainly fruit flies and spiders with your barrels, and you know, one takes care of the other. It's circle of life.
So you don't need to import lizards to patrol your barrel room then?
No. Okay. I don't know where that big-ass lizard came from, but it scared the daylights out of me. All I saw was this giant slithering tail that looked, you know, kind of rat-like.
Yeah.
And then started chasing around and got down on my hands and knees and looked. I was like, oh, that's a lizard. That was a big-ass lizard. I'm like, all right, fine. We got lots of little ones outside the brewery. But this was a big one. I'm like, dang. It was bigger than that lizard over there. It was probably 2 or 3 times that size.
That's huge.
Yeah. It had a tail like this.
Man. Yeah, usually you got to see shows narrated by David Attenborough to see lizards that big.
Right. Or Crocodile Dundee type of things. I don't know if you saw my picture in my fine presentation.
Oh, no. Let's see this.
That was me wrangling the lizard.
Oh, yeah. Man, that's almost person-sized.
Right.
You've never looked better, by the way. This must be from your younger years.
No. This is maybe a year or 2 ago.
Wow. I mean, what happened?
I opened a brewery. That's what the hell happened. So generally, I think you're not going to get mice or rats or anything like that. Especially if you maintain a clean floor, you're not spilling anything. Like I said, you want to keep the outsides of the barrels clean. The more you spill, the more insects you're going to get. So I guess that wraps it up. Like you said, until the questions, I think we're good. That's another fine series of knowledge we have imparted. If you enjoy this show, make sure to check out all our fine sponsors. All those folks are paying money to make this show possible. So check them out. They're all good folks, and especially our dear friend Mr. John Blickman. Send him an email, feedback@blickmanengineering.com. He actually set that email up just for us, so you could tell him how much you enjoy this show. And when you do, it makes him writing the check each month much easier. So keep doing it, and that way we'll still be on here and giving you information like this. Check out all the other fine sponsors. Like I said, check out the BN Store, the Brewing Network. Lots of great shows. And if you like more barrel stuff, the Barrel Show. Yep, the Sour Hour is a show dedicated to just this sort of stuff. All things mixed fermentation, hosted by Jay Goodwin of the Rare Barrel. So check us out. There you go. Another fine product of the Brewing Network. Till then, everybody, brew strong.
Brew strong, everyone.